News Radio 1000 KTOK. I'm Gwin Faulcon-Lippert. I know you've been watching this with great curiosity, as have I. And if you have any empathy at all, you think, what's going to happen to these people that have spent their lives building their homesteads, and now it's in the path of a new turnpike? Here with me in studio is Randy Carter. He's Director of Strategic Communications for Pike Off OTA, right? Oklahoma
Yes.
Turnpike Authority. And you have one of those homes that you built, and I'm going to just say go, because there are so many aspects of this. I will say, I would think having the only Rose Rock vein in America in the path of the turnpike would get people's attention. That Lake Thunderbird water would get people's attention. But take it away, Randy Carter.
Well, thank you, Gwen. Pleasure to be here. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about our No Turnpikes mission. Yes, indeed. Actually, I have two homes in the path. Two homes, yes. I built one. I moved out to this location about 1979, and by 1982, I had, I bought this ratty old beat-up mobile home. And I intentionally bought a ratty old beat-up mobile home so I would force myself not to live in it, but to build my own home, which I did. And I built that home by hand. I poured every bit of concrete. I plumbed every pipe. I wired every wire. I did the whole thing myself. And the house is still standing, believe it or not.
And this is what they call the Eastern Loop.
No, this is called the Southern Extension.
Southern Extension.
Yes, there's three extensions, or three of this access project that we're specifically concerned about with Cleveland County. The Tri-City Connector, which is over by the airport in Newcastle. Mm-hmm. The East-West Connector, which is basically Indian Hills from I-35 going east towards the Kickapoo. And then the Southern Extension, which is proposed to go from the Kickapoo and connect to Purcell. Near I-35, yes. So, and back in February, I saw, they were going to build a new turnpike. I pulled up the information on their website, and I looked closely, and I found out that, indeed, my living room was the median of the turnpike.
Okay, let me stop right here.
Okay.
They're saying, no, we haven't chosen the path of any of these yet.
Well, that's what they're saying publicly, and I'm going to talk about that because they say we don't know how many homes we're going to take. Well, there is a proposed route. They have published that proposed route. We know that the engineering firms, that a contract was just issued this past week to fund 60% of the engineering studies, and they have been told not to deviate from that route at this point.
But we haven't picked a route.
Well, that's what they're saying publicly. Now, And
it affects 600 homes?
600, well, they say they don't know, but somehow we have managed to look at the routes on the map, and then somehow we've been able to count the homes that are affected by that route. It's amazing technology. I guess I should share it with the Turnpike Authority. They may not be aware of it. I don't know. But, 600 homes, and they say, I've heard both their Director of Communications and the Deputy Director of the whole Turnpike Authority say, well, we don't know how many homes are going to be taken.
But eminent domain, and they're starting to measure and reach out and things like that.
Yes, some letters have just gone out to people on the east-west corridor that I'm aware of that have told them that they are going to have to allow the Turnpike Authority and their contractors to come on and to start doing some surveying. So, that's like, hey, we're coming. And it's a little disheartening. It's like right now. I mean, I looked at this back in March, and frankly, when I was glad I was wearing brown pants when I looked at the site. But it's a little bit like the sword of Damocles, if you remember that mythology. A sword is tied by a horsehair and is over the head of a man who wants to be king. He never knows when that sword's going to drop. He never knows if the sword is going to drop. And he may live through it, he may not. That's exactly what we feel like right now. They say the routes haven't been decided, but yet my home is in the route, but it hasn't been decided. It's a tough position to be in because, frankly, there's a lot of people that need. Well, the lady down the street from me just the other day, her dishwasher went out. Does she want to spend the money to buy a new dishwasher? I know a guy that his air conditioning needs to be replaced, $6,000 or $7,000 to replace that. But yet, if the home's going to be gone.
Well, are they projecting like it's going to be completed in 15 years or something like that?
They're saying 15 years, but then that's what they were saying back in March. Now they seem to be putting the pedal to the metal because there's been quite a few things going on. I think they're really trying to rush things because they've met with a lot of resistance, and both through the legislature, through some lawsuits, and I think they're trying to push so fast that it's like, well, we've gone this far, we can't be stopped.
Right.
So
we're too big to fail.
Exactly.
That's right.
Exactly.
Well, and there was the Cleveland County lawsuits. I mean, and your representatives and people have really stood up for the citizens.
Yes, there has been Standridge in the Senate brought a bill about to basically create more oversight, get them to slow down a little bit. That bill, it passed the Senate, then it went to the House, and there was, massaging in it, and it went back to a conference committee and blah, blah, blah. It ended up not getting out of that committee.
And then Stan Ward, who once upon a time was the legal counsel for OU.
That is correct.
Said they violated the open meetings laws twice.
That is correct.
And that should end it. Do you believe that?
Well, technically, I don't think it would end it. What it would do, it was force them to go back and redo the process and have open meetings and then pass those or have that before the Turnpike Authority Board and have those approved. What that lawsuit will do is nothing more than slow things down.
Slow things down.
But if things get slowed down enough, then we can go back to, I don't know how this happened. Somehow, the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority announced this great big project after the legislature was already in session this spring. Oh, my goodness, it's too late to file any legislation about it. Can you imagine that?
Wow.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the reasons that they're really, really pushing is because we've had a lot of support from the legislature. And I don't know if you're aware of, but now there are 3 interim studies concerning the Turnpike Authority that are going to happen in the fall. 2 in the Senate and 1 in the House.
Of this new, I think, is it called Access Oklahoma or something
I think that's what it's called.
About the Turnpike Authority or about this project?
The titles are a little bit, they're still kind of in the working process right now. But yes, we're going to specifically be able to present information from our point of view about the Turnpike Authority. It's possible that legislation or a proposed legislation could come out of that. We would certainly love to have an audit of the Turnpike Authority. In their 70-plus years of existence, they have never been audited by an outside auditor. They hire their own auditor to audit, but that's a little bit like a fox guarding the hen house. Sure. And we came within just a few votes of getting an audit, having the legislature call for an audit of the Turnpike Authority. The House, by unanimous consent, that's a mouthful, passed the bill or the resolution. It was a resolution to audit the Turnpike Authority. That was the second to the last day of the session. It had to go to the Senate, get on the agenda for the next day. Well, that didn't happen. Senator Mary Boren took great political risk and stood up and asked for a suspension of the rules in order to hear that resolution and call for an audit of the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority. However, in order to suspend the rules, you have to have a supermajority, which is, I believe, 32 votes in the Senate. We came up about 8 votes short, even though that would have been a majority in a regular, if they hadn't had to call for the suspension of the rules. So we have a lot of support on our side at this point with the legislature. And again, I think that's just my personal opinion. I think that's why they're trying to push so hard. Let's talk about here's an interesting point. We've discovered through research and that there's a company that comes in and makes projections as to the amount of revenue that the turnpike that a new turnpike will bring in. Mm-hmm. In the 70-plus years of the Turnpike Authority, those projections have only been 63% 63% accurate. Now, I remember when I was in school, if I got a 63, that was an F.
It's called a repeat.
Yeah, you got to go back and do it again. That's a failing grade.
Yes.
And yet, based on those projections, that's how the Turnpike Authority justifies selling bonds to build those turnpikes.
It's amazing. And if you hadn't looked at the news that day, would you know would be going on? I mean, they didn't notify you all, did they?
Oh, no. There was no notification. Well, why would they notify us? They don't know where it's going yet.
Eminent domain.
Mm-hmm.
Randy Carter is here. He is the Director of Strategic Communications for Pike Off OTA. We're talking about the Access Oklahoma turnpikes that are proposed. Would you like it if they took your home? Let's talk more. You're listening to 1000 KTOK. I'm Gwin Faulcon-Lippert. News Radio 1000 KTOK, Gwin Faulcon-Lippert, talking with Randy Carter. He is the Director of Strategic Communications for Pike Off OTA, and it involves a program that they are proposing called Access Oklahoma. Now, it's very controversial, let me say it that way, and Randy, I want to hear everything you want to tell me.
I've got pages and pages. Let's talk about what happened back in I believe it was around the 1st of May. The Turnpike Authority decided they needed a $200 million line of credit to proceed on these projects. Well, they had to go before the Council of Bond Oversight in order to get that approved. Mm-hmm. Well, one of the check boxes, the Bond Oversight Committee just merely checks to make sure that their application is all in order.
Okay.
And approve that. Well, there's a box on there that has to be checked, or should not be checked, that says there is active litigation. And it seems...
And you all had already filed your lawsuit?
Well, two or 3 days before.
Yeah.
Filed that lawsuit. So the... Turnpike Authority goes before, asks them for a $200 million line of credit, and because there's litigation on those 3 legs of the turnpike, they approve the $200 million line of credit with the exception that they could not use any of that money for those 3 legs of the turnpike that we talked about previously.
Okay, and yes, and that's the Tri-City, the Indian Hill, and the Southern Extension?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
And then the next day or so, the Turnpike Authority comes out and they say, well, we're just going to use other money on those parts of the project.
So we'll rob Peter to pay Paul.
Exactly. And then they realized how good that didn't sound.
Well, that sounds so underhanded.
Well, yeah, that's kind of what they thought because they kind of backed that back out again a few days later. But then they called on June the 9th. They called for approximately June 9th. I'm not positive on the exact date, but they called for a special meeting of the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority Board, came in, wanted to renege to cancel the $200 million line of credit that they had applied for and gotten approved by the Bond Council. And then they wanted to ask for a $1 billion bond issue.
Well, this sounds like a poker game.
It does, doesn't it? That's exactly what it is. They certainly raised the ante. But let me tell you what the ante was, if you want to talk about that. When they canceled the $200 million line of credit, they had to pay $40,000 in legal fees and $35,000 in banking fees to Wells Fargo, who had initiated the line of credit for them. So $75,000
just went away.
It was gone.
We spent it, yes.
And, we want to say it was the taxpayers' money, but really it's the toll payers' money.
Yes.
And you and I are the toll payers.
Well, one of the things about this, if we have all these turnpikes, this morning on Flashpoint, Todd Lamb made the comment that he has to take a turnpike every day. Well, that doesn't mean necessarily that you like paying the toll.
Oh, that's true. No, I agree.
And what are people supposed to do? Just pay the toll?
Well, they're hoping that because they are wanting to go $5 billion in debt to build all these turnpikes. Now, it's interesting. They're in $1.7 billion of debt right now. Again, approximately. And of the revenues that come in to pay that debt, the revenues that the turnpikes generate, 50 to 60% of the revenue goes to debt service.
So you never get out of it.
Absolutely not. They're just kicking the can down the road for future generations is what they're doing right now.
And then you have to repair the turnpike.
Oh, well, yeah. That's where, I mean, there's repair, there's maintenance. They're wanting to build new turnpikes, but they've got all this debt. And don't quote me on this, but I understand that when they get $5 billion more in debt with the 6.7 billion with a B dollars in debt, I have heard that is almost as much as the total debt of the state of Oklahoma.
Wow.
Yeah. And get this, there are about 12,300 miles of highway in the state of Oklahoma. There are about 630 miles of turnpike. That's about 5% of all the highways in the state of Oklahoma. Yet they want to be in debt as much as the whole rest of the state for 5% of the highways. And the revenue that comes in from that is going to be 50 to 60% to pay off that debt.
And it'll never get paid off.
Oh, it'll never get paid off. Never get paid off. Only three out of the 11 turnpikes that exist in the state of Oklahoma operate in the black. It's called cross-pledging.
Yes.
The Turner Turnpike is, again, it's not a business. It's a state agency. But the Turner Turnpike operates profitably. The Will Rogers Turnpike operates profitably. And the H.E. Bailey from Lawton, Oklahoma City, well, actually, State Line, Wichita Falls to Oklahoma City.
Kilpatrick does not?
I don't know. I don't have specific figures on that. But as from our research, we only have 3 of the 11. That's possible. Again, I am not an expert on these numbers, but if it's 4 of 11, that's still not a very good. That's another F.
So how can citizens outside the path of the eminent domain, they're going to come in and force you to surrender your property? I mean, at a fair price. So what? Surrender your property. You've built 2 homes yourself. I mean, you did the labor. I mean, I can imagine the pain that would cause you. But how can we help with this?
Well, there's something that's important to remember. The legislature has authorized a number of turnpikes, and those turnpikes that could be built will affect 600,000 Oklahomans. So, friends out there, they could come take your property when they decide to build these other turnpikes. Check on their site. There's a turnpike that's supposed to go from Newcastle to Woodward. There's supposedly another one that goes from Frederick to Idabel, approximately.
Oh.
There's another one that is supposed to be within 30 miles of the eastern border of Oklahoma.
You know, we have the Northwest Passage, which is free.
Yes, it is.
Because taxpayers pay for that.
That's
not
correct.
Shareholders, not boards of directors, not all of that.
Not bondholders and foreign investors.
Yes. So how can people help Pike Off OTA?
Well, you could certainly go to our website, pikeoffota.com. We have a place where people can volunteer, and we are an all-volunteer organization. And you can also go in and make donations to our cause. Lawsuits are not free. It's costing money to file these lawsuits. We had a fundraiser not too long ago and raised a really substantial amount of money, which I was very pleased. It was a group effort, and again, like I said, we're all volunteers. A lot of us are people that are directly in the proposed path. Stan Ward, for example, it goes right through Stan Ward's living room as well.
A lot of retirees as well.
Yeah.
I mean, here you build your house, you live in paradise, you think you're set for life, and now you're fighting the Turnpike Authority.
That's right. You know, one of the really sad things about this is I'm going to have to clean out all the crap out of my house instead of my kids after I'm gone. That's just not right.
So to people that say, well, that's just progress, you know, you should have known. Should you have known? this?
How would I possibly have known? Now, back in the 90s, they proposed to build a highway through Norman about 3 miles east or 3 miles west of where the proposed route is now.
That was the Eastern Loop, I think.
It might have been called that. I wasn't so directly involved back then. I was aware of it, and
I did a show about that.
Oh, okay.
Many shows about that.
Okay, then
yes.
you probably know much more about it than I do. But if they went that direction, they would take out geometrically fewer homes. They would cause much less. And I'm not proposing that they kick somebody else out. I don't know if you remember.
How can they possibly, though, affect Lake Thunderbird, which is drinking water?
Drinking water.
Affect the Rose Rock Sanctuary, I'll say it that way, because there's nowhere else. I mean, truly, how can they? Are we going to wish that the Rose Rock was a living thing and go Nature Conservancy or something?
Well, there's lots of things. There's lots of different avenues that we are pursuing. I don't know if you're aware of this, but Lake Thunderbird is considered an impaired water source, as it is now. Where they're proposing to bring these turnpikes through will make it even worse and affect the Garber-Wellington aquifer, which fuels a lot of wells and out in that direction. And Lake Thunderbird is the water source for Norman, Midwest City, and Dell City. So there's hundreds of thousands of people whose water source will be adversely affected by this turnpike coming through.
Okay. In our last couple of minutes, how do people get in touch with you?
Again, pikeoffota.com is a great way to get in touch with us. We have a couple of Facebook pages. People can check us out there. You're certainly welcome to call me or anybody else on those pages, message us through Facebook. We'd be glad to have any volunteers, any ideas of how we can go about putting a stop to this devastating, I call it a Category 5 turnpike coming through.
It is.
It is a Category 5. We have lots of arrows on our quiver. We are planning to shoot as many as we can, as often as we can. We don't know what's going to hit the target, if anything will. We just don't know. But I personally am willing to do everything that is moral, ethical, and legal to fight these turnpikes from coming through. And frankly, I probably would not have known about all these things we talked about: the debt, the F projections, the 63% projections of revenue. I probably would not have known about this if it hadn't come directly through my house. So I have a lot of skin in the game, but I've discovered that there's a lot of things about the Turnpike Authority that just don't smell right.
There you go. Randy Carter, Pike Off OTA. Find out as much as you can. Thank you so much for coming up. You're listening to 1000 KTOK. I'm Gwin Faulcon-Lippert.